This is 40K Today. 40K news so important, they sent a Vindicare assassin to take care of it.
Welcome to 40K Today. We're going to spend the next 15 minutes or so covering what's going on all over the world in our wonderful hobby of Warhammer 40,000. Today is Thursday, June 18th, and I'm Paul Murphy. Every day our 40K world changes and we get drips and drops from the Warhammer community team. Waiting for this edition to drop has me shivering with antissa. We're kicking the show off with a very special segment from Tanya Gates.
All right, we are here for another Women in Warhammer feature, and I'm sitting here with Jen. Thanks, Jen, for being on the program.
No, thanks for having me.
So, what the Women in Warhammer feature is we just find women who are passionate about the hobby, competing, lore, anything like that. We just like to sort of get to know them a little bit better. So maybe
Awesome.
we could start off with you giving our listeners a little bit of a background and how you got started in Warhammer and wargaming in general.
Okay. Well, my family growing up was always very much into board games. And shortly after I started to date my husband, I discovered that he was very much into games as well, only he tended to play a lot more of the video games. And we moved to the mainland, and I said, I'm done. I don't want to do all these online games where we have no interaction with people. Couldn't we find a board game group or something? And he goes, well, there was this game I played when I was a teenager. And I went, okay, so what is it? He goes, well, it's called Warhammer, and there's actually a store in town. I said, great, let's go. And it kind of backfired on me. It went from being a easy game to learn to we owned just about everything.
That's really interesting that you have like an entire family of gamers in your house. What is it like playing with them, but also playing against them?
Challenging.
Yeah, yeah.
My oldest was 3 when we were doing a lot of painting, and so he wanted to paint. So that's how it started with him. So our kids grew up with models around, with our painting desk around, and they just learned, you don't touch. And then they started collecting their own stuff. My youngest 2 are 9 and 11 now. They do more of the D&D figs, but my oldest has a Blood Angel army, and a Skaven army and a few other things that he's played. My biggest challenge with playing against my kids is no different than when I play against any other kid. You feel bad when you beat them.
But it builds
they're really there
character.
for fun. Well, yes, but then it's hard to think of, I have all of this skill from when I've played in tournaments and stuff, and the strategy is different in my brain than it is in theirs.
Yes.
So I find
yes.
that part to be challenging, but it's actually gaming against my husband that's harder than my kids.
I'm going to level with you. My husband and I also hate playing against each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can definitely say it's caused more than its fair share of you're sleeping on the couch discussions.
Yeah. Yeah. I can relate for sure.
But we enjoy painting together.
Yes. Yes. My husband's desk is right beside mine as well.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned tournaments, and I thought maybe we could touch on the fact that you help organize Kippers Melee, which is one of the biggest wargaming tournaments in Western Canada.
It's super weird to hear that that's the case.
But it is the case.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And I just think that's really cool. But in my experience, my limited experience, there's not actually a lot of women who go to tournaments, at least not in my area. Have you found this
In
to
my
be the case?
experience, I was the only woman in wargaming on the West Coast until about the same time that I started chatting with you a little bit on Facebook, back when we had that Women in Wargaming Facebook page with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
After that, I started to see some people. It really started changing when Age of Sigmar hit, was when we started seeing some growth of females coming out. And it was tough. I mean, I grew up with all guys, so for me, it wasn't a big deal to go hang out with the guys and do what's traditionally known as guy things.
Yeah.
But for a lot of women, it's intimidating. It's that guy atmosphere in the room, and it's the way the guys talk and joke and comment. And I actually worked for Games Workshop for a little while after my oldest was born. And I was the one that would say, bring your girlfriend. You guys stop talking to them about playing and painting. Let me talk to them.
Nice.
And a few of them started that way. By the time I left Vancouver, we had 3 or 4 girls coming out on a fairly regular basis.
Nice.
But that was because we made the environment comfortable for them. We made sure the guys were more conscious of the things they were saying.
Yes. So just one more question.
Yeah.
If you were going to give any advice to a woman who was considering coming out to a tournament of some kind, but was having a little bit of reservation about it, what would your advice be to them?
Bring a friend.
Yep.
Come out anyway, despite the anxiety that it gives you. Come track down one of us ladies that is there, because Attack X and Wet Coast typically have more than just me that go to them now.
Yep.
And if it's Kippers, come hang out with me. I don't game at Kippers anymore. There's just not enough time in my day. But it's a lot of fun to socialize and introduce people around and help make them feel a lot more comfortable.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jen.
No problem.
What a great segment. Thanks, Tanya and Jen. Next up, we kick off a conversation about sportsmanship.
Today's episode of 40K Today is brought to you by Frontline Gaming. Frontline Gaming is a one-stop shop for all your Warhammer hobby needs, discounted products, American-made gaming mats and terrain, and a full line of miniatures painting service and daily hobby content. And this can all be found at frontlinegaming.org.
We all have an opinion on what sportsmanship is. Alex Macdougall gives us his thoughts.
Alex Macdougall, all-around good guy and super sweet dude, with formerly of the long locks before Charity Hammer, I guess, right?
Yeah, the metal hair is gone.
The metal hair is gone. So you've been writing a series of articles recently for The Art of War, and I wanted to highlight them because I think they're important. You've been talking a lot about what we'll call it sportsmanship, and maybe another way to put it is to not being that guy, which is sort of a famous reference that we have in the hobby, right? So you want to talk to people a little bit about what got you started writing those and kind of where you went with it?
I started writing about sportsmanship because it was something that was, I don't know, just kind of close to me. Like, it's something that I've always valued in any kind of competition. I've done competitive sports for years now. So I just wanted to transfer that from sports to 40K and kind of how we think about the game. And I started writing about it just because I had a lot of it on my mind and I needed to get it out.
That makes sense. So you've written several articles around this subject. The last one you wrote, do you want to talk about that one really quick? What was the focus of it?
That was the playing by intent, yes?
Yep.
Yeah, the playing by intent is a big thing because it's linked to sportsmanship because it talks about how we communicate with the other person. When we're describing intent, we're trying to describe what we're doing to the other person. I know what I'm going to do. I've already got it in my mind, but I need to have them understand what I'm going to do. And when you can make your intentions known, you come across as honest, and there's not going to be any of those horrible 40K gotcha moments. If you've told them exactly what you're going to do, then they're going to know how to respond, and no one's going to get caught out and be angry about anything.
Yeah, and I think it's important. One of the reasons why playing by intent is important, and I'd like to get your thoughts on this, is that we're playing a miniatures game, and then by its very nature is kind of sloppy. Like, measurement is kind of sloppy. I mean, you can do everything you can to have clean measurements and to play a clean game, but there's got to be a social contract there where we're both working together to sort of play a clean game. And one of the ways we do that is by intent, because if you explain what you're trying to accomplish to your opponent, if you say, hey, by the way, I'm making sure that this model is outside of your heroic engagement range, you can see that it's more than 3 inches, but then later we go to measure it and it's, somehow the model got bumped, the table got bumped, something weird happened, we mismeasured it when we measured it, then it's very clear what your intent was. And so there's none of this like weird circumstance where you're kind of like, well, now you see the heroic intervention, but you didn't see it before, and there's not this bad feeling and all that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. Let's use the heroic intervention one. If you're telling your opponent, this is what I'm trying to do, and let's say it ends up that you're like right on the cusp, you're like 2.99, right? You're just within 3, then they're going to know, like, okay, you fat fingered it a little bit and moved too far, or somebody's bumped the table and things have changed, but you told them what they were going to do. But yeah, if you never said anything about it and you're within 3, they have every right to then heroically intervene into you. But that might feel bad because in your head you were thinking, oh, I don't want to get that close. So being able to say it out loud lets everyone know what's going on.
Yeah, and then the other thing that I always like to say when it comes to playing by intent is if you are communicative about what you're trying to accomplish, your opponent can help you accomplish it, saving time for both of you, right? Because a lot of times it's like kind of complex measurements. Like a good example is deep striking. You're like, well, I want to be within 9 inches of this, and I want to deep strike in a way that model is the closest model. So if I cast a smite, it's going to hit them, and I want to make sure that I'm not within 12 inches of this relic that's in play. And you do all the measurements, and there's a way to do it, but sometimes you need multiple measurements on the table at once. And if you're explaining to your opponent what you're trying to do, then they'll help you do it, right? So
yeah, exactly. And a lot of times when you're playing that kind of way, it ups engagement. Like if you just do the thing that you're going to do and you never talk to them about it, then they're just kind of sitting there observing you take your turn, and vice versa as it goes back and forth. But if you're talking to them and explaining your intent, then there's more of an opening for conversation, and you can just be talking about things. I'm going to do this. They say, oh, this one time in another game, somebody did this to me, and it just opens up the game in general.
Yeah, I think that's great. So my last question is, obviously, we think it's important to play by intent. Would you say in your experience, most players play by intent? And would you also say at the top tables, most players play by intent? Because that's been my experience.
I think most players play by intent, sometimes not knowingly. They are just describing what they're doing, but they're not doing it with the intent of explaining exactly what they're doing. They're just kind of verbalizing their own thought process. But at the top table, intent is definitely a huge thing. When you're playing at that top table, it's a constant back and forth of communication to know exactly what's going on. So that way no one can get caught out on anything. If you're going for the tournament win, you want it to be a nice, clean game.
Right. And that's one of the things I really appreciate about most of the good players. I never want to use the word all, but basically everyone that I've seen plays by intent and plays pretty clean. Like sportsmanship is important. And I think you guys are doing a great job leading the way. So I just want to take a moment to highlight that. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Alex.
It's the model of the day, the model of the day, the model of the day.
Our model of the day is the worst social distancer in the galaxy. We have a stunning typhus from Pyrotonic87 on Instagram. Typhus is bursting at the seams with corrosion, and Pyrotonic87 really brings this character to life. Check it out on Facebook and Instagram. The trick with weathering is being able to feel the texture with your eyes. We found this guy because Pyrotonic87 used our hashtag 40K2, the number day. Please, if you'd like to have your model featured with us, or you've seen a model that we should feature on the show, don't hesitate to let us know. And that's it for today. Thanks a lot for coming along this ride with us. A big thanks to our content producer, Alex Boehner, our social media guru, Tanya Gates, and our technical producer, Seamus Ronan, for all their hard work and once again putting this program together. If you like the show, get on over to Facebook and give us a like and a share. Same with Instagram. And if you feel like dropping a review on iTunes or your podcast player, it helps us a lot. Basically, every 5-star helps somebody else locate us. And that's what we want to do here. It's a great way to support the show. We'll see you tomorrow for our Power Pack Friday episode to set you up for the weekend. And man, we got a tall glass of water waiting.